Welcome to Lawyerpreneur, where we discuss the alternate paths that allow lawyers to engage their entrepreneurial spirits, connect their creativity to their careers, and distinguish themselves from others. I'm your host, Jeremy Richter. Today's episode is brought to you by ALPS, who wishes the best for you in 2022 and is committed to bringing ease to insurance. ALPS is the nation's largest direct writer of lawyers' malpractice insurance. That means you have direct access to your insurance team from account managers to claims attorneys. And ALPS has the simplest, most straightforward online application out there. Qualifying firms can even apply, see rates, and bind coverage all in about 20 minutes. When it comes to continuing your coverage, ALPS makes that easy too, with 100% online renewal. With ALPS, you can spend less time insurancing and more time innovating. Get started at applyonline.alpsinsurance.com. That's applyonline.alpsinsurance.com. In addition to the corporate sponsorship that helps pay for the hosting and transcription of the show, you can support Lawyerpreneur on Patreon at patreon.com/lawyerpreneur. For less than the cost of a .1, you can help pay for the time it takes to create and edit Lawyerpreneur and receive copies of my two most recent books, Stop Putting Out Fires and Level Up Your Law Practice. Now, on to the interview. Brian Gibbons is a partner in the civil defense litigation firm Wade Clark Mulcahy in Port Washington, New York. He also hosts the interview-based podcast, Call Your Next Witness. Brian, welcome to Lawyerpreneur.
Jeremy, thank you very much for having me. And just to clarify, I am talking to you from Port Washington, New York, where I live. My firm is New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Miami, and actually we have an office in London as well. But the Port Washington aspect is my hometown.
Okay, so that's you, and then y'all are much broader.
Yeah, I'd say our home office, our main office is in Lower Manhattan, which, as we're recording this, and I don't know when this is going to post, but I think it's safe to say that COVID will probably still be around to some degree. And I've been back in the office in Manhattan probably 3 days a week for a handful of months now. It's still there, and it's been eerily normal going in and commuting every day.
Well, that's a perfect intro then, because that's where I wanted to start. I mean, so we're recording this mid-November. It'll air in early January of 2022. So as we sit here, you and I have been part of meetings every month with DRI's Law Practice Management Committee for the last 20 months, which seems impossible. Like in some ways that seems like it's been weeks, and in others it's been an entire lifetime has transpired. And we've talked every month about lawyers around the country and how litigation has been affected by the pandemic, and it's just so different how everybody's handling it. Y'all have been back to the office. What does litigation look like now and in the immediate future?
Well, it's the answer to that question has evolved over the past handful of months. When the pandemic first started, and I'm sure some of your listeners will recall, New York City got hit real hard, real quickly, where there were, several hundred deaths, even upwards of 1,000 deaths almost daily. It seemed like it was really bad. So, New York City was really on hold completely for about 6 months. Then in, I'd say, the fall of 2020, the courts started to try to get back to normal. And by normal, that had a different definition also. But everything in person was on hold. They started doing, Zoom or Microsoft Teams conferences and oral arguments and things like that. But then we had another COVID surge in the winter, which everybody knew was going to happen because once the weather got cold, all those backyard cocktails turned into kitchen cocktails, and the surge came back. I would say, though, that Delta variant and little trends here and there aside, things have largely been improving since March of 2021. Now, there are trials that are starting to happen, but it is still very much, I would still say, a dam that has not quite burst open yet.
Mm.
And I'll give you an example. I am a member of the Nassau County Bar Association, which is the county that I live in on Long Island. And we had a discussion, conference call, whatever you want to call it, with plaintiffs' attorneys, defense attorneys, and a couple of judges on the call. And one of the judges mentioned that Nassau County currently has, I want to say, 900 cases on its trial calendar. And by that, I mean ready to go, discovery finished, all the motion practice done, 900 cases ready to go. And the courthouse, because of COVID and social distancing, has the capacity to try 3 to 4 cases at a time.
Oof.
In the real world, this same courthouse would be trying 20 to 30 cases at a time. So the assembly line keeps moving, so to speak. The reason this is so relevant is this is Nassau County on Long Island. This isn't even in New York City. New York City is even busier than Nassau County is, and cases are being tried, but not nearly with the frequency that they need to be. So that has been a challenge for both sides of the aisle, to be honest. Plaintiffs' attorneys in general, and not to paint with a broad brush, but I think plaintiffs' attorneys need there to be a trial date in order to incentivize insurers to pay. Hey, defense counsel, let's settle this case, or else I could ring the bell and hit for 5 times the settlement value. With no bell to ring, plaintiffs have a lot less leverage. And then from the defense perspective, we rely on that trial prep, the revenue, literally the revenue from the time spent preparing for trial and from physically going to court. And all that has been gone also. So there's been, we're trying to move cases that can be moved. And I think for the most part, the industry has done that. But as you well know, there are certain cases that all attorneys, kind of have in the back of their mind that this is going to be a trial case. There's no bridging the gap to settle this one. And those cases continue to accumulate.
Well, let me ask you this. So you mentioned revenue.
Yeah.
And so I know for me, and this has changed, it still depends on what judge, but one of the things that changed significantly for me was Zoom hearings and status conferences and docket calls, that instead of what might be a 2 or 3 hour billable entry, now became a 0.4.
Yeah.
And,
yep.
That may not make a huge difference for one particular day, but when you have 70 cases, and it adds up. And so when you're not having trials and all of a sudden you're not traveling, how are you, as somebody who is in management position at a firm, making up the revenue deficit that things like that are creating?
It's a good question, a question we've been asking ourselves for 20 months now. And Jeremy, do you do mostly defense work? Do you do any coverage work at all?
I do coverage. I do mostly defense, but some coverage work as well.
Yeah, the reason I bring that up is we said to attorneys in our office very early on, look, the court appearances are gone. They are not coming back anytime soon. And in that sense, from a billing perspective, we are all becoming coverage attorneys, because you gotta earn every calorie that you burn. The like you said, the 3.2 for a court appearance where there is a lot of waiting around and speaking with other attorneys, but you are in court for 3 hours. All of those 3.0s, 3.2s became 0.5s, 0.6s, 0.7s. So where do you make up that extra time? The short answer, I think, is the attorneys that we have on hand are probably handling more files than they did before. In pre-COVID times, handling, say, 35 to 40 defense files at a given time would keep you busy. And by defense files, we're talking, premises liability, motor vehicle accidents, construction accidents, mostly things that would fall under the realm of property and casualty defense. I'd say a lot of the attorneys who used to be maxed out at 35 or 40, you get a lot of these attorneys that are now handling 50, 55 cases. So, and the reason for that is because of capability, of necessity, and the ability to take on an increased caseload, because the in-person court appearances or even the in-person meetings with clients were not happening for a good while. Thankfully, those are coming back. But even as we sit here today, I think I've done one in-person deposition in the past 20 months. Everything has been remote.
Looking at it from a different angle, how is the lack of court appearances and depositions and all that affecting the younger associates in firms as far as what you're seeing?
Well, it's a good question. What we miss during, the Zoom court conferences, the Zoom hearings, motion appearances, whatever, they're all effective. They all get the job done. But there is a lot less downtime that you rely upon in court to really speak with other attorneys about exactly what's going on with the case. Let's say you have a multi-defendant construction accident case. When you're waiting to speak to the judge, that's when the attorneys have the discussion. Hey, look, the plaintiff said this at his deposition. I'm not really buying it, and here's why. And then the other attorney will say, you know what, I was thinking the same thing. And now you're forming alliances and you're leveraging positions. When you have a Zoom motion hearing or a Zoom conference, there's no downtime. There is no opportunity to have those discussions. And even though you can always pick up the phone, it's just less organic when it happens that way. And another part of your question about, just how is it affecting younger attorneys? It's interesting. When I was starting out as an associate, and then, even up until just before COVID, the idea of going to court and arguing a motion became almost mundane because it would happen so frequently that it would not be an anxiety-ridden event. Once you get used to getting beat up by a judge a little bit, it's like, okay, I see how this goes. This isn't too bad. But now when I'm telling newer attorneys, okay, this motion, this oral argument, this is probably going to happen in person. And you get a double take, like, wait a minute, you mean I have to go into court? And then you forget, oh yeah, you've never been to court because there has been no court. So it's something that's going to get back to whatever the new normal is going to be. But younger attorneys are just getting a lot less, boots on the ground experience than they otherwise would have because of the pandemic and the fallout, especially in a high population density area like New York City.
Yeah. And I've found myself over the last few months of, there were plenty of things that I could have gone to in court myself, but I decided I really need to just send one of these younger associates so they can see it. Like, I could have used the hours. That would have been nice, easy time, especially for the, not a motion hearing or whatever, but just a court appearance. I'm like, I just got to send these guys because, like you said, that they're not seeing it.
Yep.
All right. Switching tracks. I mentioned DRI earlier. How has being an active member of an industry organization like DRI affected your law practice over the long term?
DRI has afforded a great opportunity to help me and other people at my firm, for lack of a better term, establish our brand a little bit on a national level. DRI is, I'm pretty sure the home base is in Chicago, and it is a nationwide organization. But to be perfectly frank, it's not as prevalent in New York City as some other defense organizations are. But luckily for us, in the insurance defense industry, our client base is all over the country.
Yeah.
So when we publish things in DRI, whether it's on cyber liability or law practice management or whatever it might be, we know that our readership is going to be nationwide. And in terms of how it helps our firm and helps me as a professional, it helps you put yourself out there as somebody who is active, who is on top of their game, and who is looking to add something to the industry. Whether it helps as a specific client generator, that's a little bit harder to say, because I don't know what the metrics are on that kind of thing, but I know that I've had multiple discussions with current or potential clients about things we've done through DRI, or people that I've met at the annual meeting, or at different, I know we've always attended the cyber liability conference in New York in December, and it helps. It kind of establishes your legitimacy. When clients do their due diligence on you, like Brian Gibbons, Wade Clark Mulcahy, who is this guy? Oh, okay, he writes for DRI. It's kind of a credibility establisher to some degree, and it's you can't fake that.
So a lot of folks will join big organizations like this and then say, okay, well, now I'm a member. That's enough. And yeah. I haven't found, I've done that myself for particular organizations, and it never did anything. So the key is being an active member. How did you go about getting involved so that you have writing opportunities, so that you have opportunities to be involved on committees and the direction those go? And, what kind of difference has that made?
There's no magic elixir for how to get involved. For me, the first time that I got at all involved with DRI was because the DRI annual meeting, which is in a different city every year, they used to have it coincide with the AIG Panel Council annual meeting. And, my firm one year sent me to the AIG Panel Council meeting. And to be perfectly frank, I thought that's the reason why people were there. And then I got to, and I don't remember if this was New Orleans or Boston or, whatever city it happened to be in, San Francisco maybe. When I got there, and I was expecting to see 300 or 400 attorneys for the panel council meeting, and then all of a sudden you get to the hotel and it's this giant emporium of vendors and risk managers and attorneys, and I realized how big DRI was. And shortly after that, I signed up, and I think I literally just went online through DRI and was looking at the different committees, like the Law Practice Management Committee, for example, or they used to call it the Trial and Tactics Committee. I forget what it's called, whatever the litigation committee is. I signed up for them. And ironically, I think the first person that I met through the Law Practice Management Committee was Stacy Moon at a meet and greet in San Francisco. And from there, just got involved, met a few people, and realized that the practice committees are really looking to help each other and the committee by just looking for people that are trying to put themselves out there, to put out publications, and to get involved in webinars, whatever the case may be. And you and I, Jeremy, met at through that committee as well.
Yeah.
there's, you just have to kind of put yourself out there and basically offer to do work that you don't have time to do.
Yeah, that sounds right.
That's whenever we have these committee meetings and whether it's Marta or Mario or whoever that's running the meeting, like, okay, we need some publications 3 or 4 months from now. Who has time to write? No, the answer is nobody. Nobody has time to write. Everybody's busy. But then it's like, look, if you put nothing into it, you get nothing out of it. But if you make an effort, you'll be glad you did.
So you've been mentioned through context here, the importance of meeting people and networking as being such an important part of that, because you're meeting these people who are in the same boat as you. They're in different cities. In a lot of ways, they're strangers, but there's so much kinship. And for me, I've felt a freedom in talking to people who are across the country, who I've only met in person a couple of times, but who I know are going through the same things. And I'm more comfortable talking in those environments with those people than people that I see weekly or monthly in my hometown, because, maybe they're the competition, or maybe, there's just barriers there in that close proximity that you don't feel when, people are part of a particular organization and have the same concerns and are kind of spread out. How have you made a point to attempt to expand your network in a way that feels organic and not uncomfortable or put on, and maybe it isn't organic, but it's just a necessity? What are some ideas for just going about that?
That's a great question, because that's, we're as much as we like to think that we are all, ivory tower lawyers and learned scholars, we're not in the charity business. We're here to earn a living. We're here to make money. We're here to put kids through college. And you do that by generating a client base. One of my my partners and mentors, Dennis Wade of Wade Clark Mulcahy, he is very fond of saying that, look, there's only 2 kinds of lawyers in this world. You can break down all the different practice areas any way you want, but there's only 2 kinds of lawyers: lawyers who have clients and lawyers who work for lawyers who have clients. That's it. That is the entire universe of attorneys right there. And the idea is being a lawyer who has clients. Now, this is a boring answer, but the best marketing is doing excellent legal work. That's bar none, because you get word. There is no substitute for word of mouth and doing good work for people, especially since, much like the turnover in the legal industry has been so prevalent, especially since the pandemic, I'm seeing the same thing in the insurance industry. And if you have a client that you have a good relationship with, that you've done good work for, and then you find out that that particular individual is leaving one company to go somewhere else, that right there is a business opportunity. And how you follow up with that client is, that's based on personal relationships. That's based on how you roll, so to speak, with that individual. But that's one way to generate a client base, and frankly, that's a really good way.
Yeah.
But even on multi-defendant cases that I'll have, you meet people from other walks of life, from other carriers. That I shouldn't say walks of life, but from other carriers, from other parts of the business, and generating good relationships with them, even as adversaries, can help you going forward. And this is a long roundabout way of saying, there's in terms of how to help generate your own client base, there is quality in quantity, and by that I mean, if you can develop relationships with the more the merrier. The more people you can generate relationships with, the better chance 1 or 2 or 3 of them might stick. And that's really the way this works.
So while we're talking about marketing, in March of 2021, you launched a podcast called Call Your Next Witness. And you launched it under your firm's name and as kind of a part of the firm's marketing and branding.
Yeah.
Tell me about the decision to go that route as opposed to doing it independently of the firm. I guess kind of like I've done with my podcast, because I've seen it both ways. It just kind of give me your process there, deciding to do it under the firm's umbrella.
Well, first, if I had done it without the firm's umbrella, then I would have been ripping you off completely instead of just ripping off 80% of your idea. And that's a joke, but there's some truth to that. When I saw that you had a podcast, I just thought, what a great idea. And, it's funny when you do a little bit of digging into how to create a podcast, it's a lot easier than one would think.
Yeah.
It really is. You get yourself a decent pair of noise canceling headphones, and that's basically it. Yeah, the impetus for starting it, and specifically for starting it under the firm's banner, was really a decision born out of the idea of, we're unable to travel around the country right now. We are unable to have in-person, face-to-face meetings and do CE presentations or whatever it is for clients. Let's create a podcast and, for lack of a better term, use it as a pretext to talk to clients that we otherwise would not really have an excuse to talk to all that often, especially in person. And the reason to do it under the firm's banner was to use it not only for clients that I maintain or business contacts that I have, but for anybody in the firm who wants to use it, can use it for their client base as well. And to have somebody on the line on an interview, in a 30 to 45 minute interview, and to say, hey, look, we've started this podcast geared towards young claim professionals. You're a seasoned claim professional. What do you wish you knew when you were 25 years old that you know now? And, just thinking out loud, and Jeremy, how many people do you know who are experienced in this world that have been waiting for somebody to ask them a question like that?
Yeah.
There are so many people that you could just pull the string on their back and say, what, let me tell you what I've learned. Let me tell you some of the lessons that I've learned, whether the easy way or the hard way, over the course of my, of my career. And it's been a lot of fun having these conversations. And I can't stress that enough. It is outreach, it is marketing, all that stuff, but it has just been a lot of fun to have conversations like the one that you and I are having right now.
Yeah.
To just touch base with people from around the country, to have, where it's not about a case, it's not about a fire that has to be put out. It's to just talk shop about the business of risk management and litigation, and and how we've all kind of evolved over the years.
So podcasting is still kind of out of the ordinary for lawyers and law firms in a lot of ways, even though it's been around, for 10 years and it's becoming mainstream in a lot of other areas. How did you pitch the idea to your partners, and how was it received?
It's funny you say that, because before I pitched it to the partners, I did a lot of due diligence about cost. Because the reality is, we are a mid-sized firm of about 40, 45 lawyers, give or take. And the idea of just shelling out thousands of dollars for in a marketing context where the return on investment is abstract was not going to be the most attractive idea in the world. But once I did some due diligence and I realized how quickly and easily one of these could be set up, then it was a no-brainer from there. It was, okay, Gibbons, go for it, have fun, and don't say anything inappropriate with a Wade Clark Mulcahy banner on your head. So the rule for our podcast is, look, we don't talk about industry secrets. We don't tell how the the sausage is made, so to speak, for any particular risk manager. And then we don't talk politics because no good comes out of that, especially on social media. And, the tone that I pitched to my office, and DRI is actually a perfect example for this. The tone of the discussions that I have with people is, pretend you're at a DRI conference and you meet somebody at the bar at 4:00 in the afternoon after the seminars are over. That should be the tone of the conference, because it's informal, but you still don't know who might be around and might be listening to what you're saying.
Yeah.
Which is why I say the 4:00 version of that discussion, not the 11:30 p.m. version of that discussion, which is, you don't want to go peach pit after dark here. You got to still maintain some professionalism.
So if there are lawyers out there who have out of the box marketing ideas that they want to pursue, do you have any recommendations or advice about best practices for approaching it?
Not really. It's because, you put yourself in the client's shoes, is the best way I can explain it. You got to listen to clients and you got to think about what they need. So if I were to give advice to a young associate about what they wanted to do to, dip their toe into the marketing waters, so to speak, I would say that just as a general rule, think about your clients and think about what they want, and what they need, what they would appreciate, and go from there. Before COVID, one of the things that we did is we would travel around the country, have lunch with clients, and then also do a CE presentation, because everybody needs credits. So as much as we would love to think, we are a bunch of charming individuals, and of course our clients would love to have lunch with us. Well, that might be true, but it's a little bit more enticing if you also have a scenario where they need some credits and we can provide that and then go out for lunch.
That's a perfect place to end. So let's tell folks where they can connect with you and find your podcast, Call Your Next Witness. Sure.
Well, you can just look up Call Your Next Witness on iTunes, Spotify, wherever. We've got a handful of interviews on there already done with plaintiffs' attorneys, risk managers, some experts, some other defense attorneys, and it's the conversations tend to be a lot of fun, and they are geared toward a younger audience that might have some questions about how this industry really operates. So, you can find our website at wcmlaw.com, but the podcast, just look it up by name. You'll find it.
All right. Thanks so much for your time.
Jeremy, thank you so much for having me. Always great to talk to you.
Thanks.
If you've enjoyed the show, you can support it by rating it on Apple Podcasts or wherever it is you're listening, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss anything. You can also support the show on Patreon at patreon.com/lawyerpreneur. Thanks for listening.